What's going on, guys? It's Panana here. Good morning for those watching this early in the day. This is actually going to be a nice little coverage of day one of the Orlando Regionals. So let's get started. So we had Aaron Traylor and Brady Smith, which was the very first battle that was streamed. This was a really interesting and kind of awesome battle. What I noticed immediately was that Brady has such a cool team. Personally, I really enjoyed it. I'm a huge Garganackle fan, sue me. But I also love how much power he has, having 3 different Paradox Pokemon. Now, he also has the Dragonite, which we all know what Dragonite can do since the very beginning of the season, or very beginning of Sword and Shield, Scarlet Violet, really. And then he also has the Gothitelle, which allows him to trap in opponents. So I thought Brady just had such a cool team. Immediately, though, when I saw the matchup, I was like, Aaron Traylor is gonna win. Now, I'd never like to down an opponent or anything like that, so shout out, huge ups to everyone that's in the competition. I wish I was there. Now, in terms of Aaron Traylor's team, it's really just a standard team. Now, I literally saw the names and I just knew that I recognized Aaron's name, and that's really how I picked who I thought would win the matchup initially. This also being the very first match, I was so excited for there finally to be a match that we could watch. So I was like, yeah, I'm just picking Aaron. Like, you know, let's just see what happens. Now, unfortunately, throughout this match, Brady actually had a connection issue before the matches even started. So Brady was actually down 1-0 to Aaron. So Aaron only ever had to win 1 game, which he did win his very first match. So that was definitely unfortunate, but you know, it comes with the territory of Pokemon, especially doing these tournaments. I imagine that there's such a learning curve, and being more of a veteran Pokemon like Aaron is, it just helps him out being more of a veteran Pokemon trainer. Now, this game was really interesting to me because at first I thought Angel was Angel from Pokesports. He kind of looks like him a little bit without, Angel having the, Angel Miranda having this hat on, as well as the mask and the headphones. You really can't see much of him. And I was like, is that Angel from Pokesports? So I was pretty excited, but it is not the same person, as far as I know. When I saw them in the interview, when I saw Angel Miranda in the interview, I was like, that does not look like the same person at all. So this was a really cool one. I am going to be reading a lot from my notes from yesterday, because again, this just happened not even 24 hours ago. So I'm just really checking out my notes from detailed notes from the matches. So I know that Angel won round 1 and he lost round 2. Carson had a really cool Terra Steel on his Flutter Mane, which I enjoyed because it added a very impressive defense to a great attacker. You know what I mean? Carson also had Booster Energy on his Flutter Mane, so it could outspeed other Flutter Manes. I was like, oh my goodness, this Flutter Mane is defensive, it's powerful, and it's fast now. Like, what more do you want other than, hopefully a Focus Sash? But at that point, with the defensive Terra, you probably aren't going to use the Focus Sash. So I thought that was a really cool tech by Carson. In round 3, like I said, Angel ended up losing round 2. I did say that round 3 in my notes started just like round 2. So I was nervous because I want Angel to win. Carson protected his Flutter, so Angel got a free double hit onto Gholdengo. So Angel was thinking big brain based on round 2. Angel kind of adjusted his round 3. Even though they had the same leads, Angel adjusted how he played in round 3. Which was nice. Angel then uses like a Spore and Protect. It looks like Iron Bundle with Iron Bundle. So he protected Iron Bundle, spored with Amoonguss to defeat Dondozo. I remember that. I was actually really impressed because I was thinking once Carson got his Dondozo out, I was thinking Angel was going to have to clear Smogit to ruin its stats. But Angel actually went for a very timely spore. It was the most timely spore ever. And he got Dondozo to sleep for a couple of turns. I believe he cycled out his Intimidate with his Arcanine and during those guaranteed sleep turns, and so Dondozo was just doing no damage. He wasn't able to do anything, and you know, he just really did very well. And Angel did end up winning. Yeah, so he did end up winning. So he won round 1, lost round 2, came back round 3 with the same lead, and ended up winning. So, you know, huge shout out to Angel, because I also noticed that this match was after lunch break. So I know my man's was getting that Popeye spinach in and just came out swinging. So great job, just punching his way to victory, you know. The next match that we had, let's see what time it came up. It was Wolfie versus Chongjun Pen. So I know a lot of players, and also excuse me if I'm mispronouncing any names, I'm doing my best. But I know that a lot of players in the chat were so excited for this matchup. People were so excited for this matchup. And what got me excited was seeing Wolfie's team. I was looking at Chongjun's and I was like, that probably didn't get me as excited. Chongjun has a little bit of a standard team where he has very popular Pokemon. And actually in Chongjun's interview, he said he literally picked the top 6 Pokemon. I believe that was the interview. I'll look through my notes, and if it's wrong later, I'll let you know. But I believe he picked, like, you know, some of the top Pokemon that he could. Wolf, I thought his was interesting because it was a Perish Trap team. So he actually has Screamtail and Fluttermane with Perish Song, along with Gothitelle with the obvious, you know, kind of Arena Trap ability. So it was a really, really well thought out, very cool team. Having a Mungus to sleep people is also amazing. And then Arcanine is just there to like mitigate damage if it has to. If you can't bring the other 5, bring Arcanine and he can mitigate damage and just keep your team alive while you keep them trapped to Perish Song. So Chongjun, yes, this was the song. So Chongjun said in round 1 in his interview, he did win round 1. And he said in round 1, he wanted to just test the speed of Wolf's team. So in round 1, I'm not sure if he actually brought the Dondozo, but basically Chongjun didn't go with his original strategy because he wanted to see how fast Wolf's team was in comparison to his, as well as how fast can Wolf make his team. Because there's one thing for your Fluttermane to be a fast Pokemon, but if you use inopportune protects and you know you're not using your fast Pokemon in those ideal moments, it makes your team seem slower than it is. Now, of course, that's not what I'm saying that either player did, but just in general, that's what Chongjun's mindset was. He kind of wanted to scout out his opponent a bit. He didn't want to show his opponent his strategy. And maybe Chongjun was just feeling so confident with this matchup that he thought, you know, I don't need to show my strategy in order to win. Now that was round 1. In round 2, Wolfie uses his Perish Trap. Oh my gosh, it was exactly how I explained it. It was beautiful. It was used to perfection. He actually got 4 Perish Song KOs. There's 4 Pokemon in a double battle VGC. He got all 4 of Chongjun's Pokemon with Perish Song. And you know it takes 3 turns for Perish Song to activate, so it's pretty impressive that you were able to do that. Now, what I wrote for round 3 is that round 3 started awkwardly with a series of protects on turn 1 and 2. So maybe Chongjun protected and then turn 2 Wolf protected. So basically, along with Terras, they also did their defensive Terras in round 3. Very early in in the first 2 turns. And so 0 damage was exchanged in the first 2 turns, but they both used their Terras. Mind-boggling, but also both of these trainers are thinking 3 steps ahead, you know? So Unfortunately, in this match, Wolfie had only brought one Perish Songer in his Scream Tail. He also didn't bring his Trapper. He brought Arcanine and Zero to Hero Palafin along with Amoonguss, who Amoonguss was the one to Terra in the first turn. I believe it was a Dark Terra, I want to say. Which makes sense because there's like Sucker Punch. There's, you know, of course, he's got 2 Sucker Punchers and a Shadow Baller. So it makes sense that he might want a Dark Terra. Chongjun, he ended up making a switch to avoid the Perish Song towards the end of the game. I remember Wolfglit kind of did like a risky Perish Song, knowing that he couldn't trap his opponent and his opponent could swap both of his Pokemon within 3 turns. He kind of did a risky one, and Wolf then applied pressure onto that risky Perish Song, because Wolf knew, okay, my opponent has to swap now. Let me apply pressure onto them while they're trying to swap. Unfortunately, Chongjun called his, or not unfortunately, fortunately for Chongjun, he called his coin flips properly, and he was able to actually defeat Wolf by basically making the proper switches, and then Wolf got stuck in a position where his Scream Tail's Perish Song count fell to 1, and Wolf was down to his final 2 Pokemon. So, you know, Chongjun was easily able to clean up that victory, and that was it. That was it. Yeah, it sounds quick, but I'm like, yeah, that was round 2 and 3. So Chongjun won round 1 using a non-typical strategy from himself. Round 3, he won by just honestly, Wolf unfortunately didn't bring the Pokemon that he needed to bring. Now, the next round was Joshua Lorcy versus Paul Chua, which I was so excited for. I don't know who all here is a fan of Paul Chua, but that guy is pretty impressive whenever I see him in matchups. Along with the fact that, don't sleep on Joshua Lorcy. I believe they said this may be his first... I'm lying. I'm completely lying. Joshua Lorcy, they said he's a native of the New York area, and I believe they said that he competed in many regionals as well, just many competitions. So don't sleep on Joshua Lorcy. You know, he's also just an excellent player, just in general. Like, you can look at the team and see that he's running the Great Tusks, which is very interesting. He's also running 3 Paradox Pokemon, which sometimes can be scary, right? Paul is as well, but you know, a lot of players always believe that, hey, you have to have at least 2 Pokemon that are going to provide support. And so if you're choosing 3 Paradox Pokemon, you know, they're not the best at support, so you know, it means that you're kind of restricted with the rest of your team. But both of these players created a pretty darn nice team here. As you can see, there's ever so slight differences in the team. There's like 2 differences in Pokemon. And actually, I'm realizing that Paul is using 4 Paradox Pokemon, which might be the most amount of Paradox Pokemon I've seen at this juncture. Also good to note is it looks like Paul is probably going to be using his Salamence for Tailwind. So he does have 3 support Pokemon with Arcanine, Amoonguss, and his Tailwind, not Salamence, but whatever that thing's called, Roaring Moon. So that is interesting to use a Paradox Pokemon as support, kind of like how people have been doing with Group Bonding. So to kind of start this game off, it looks like Paul had some timely swaps back and forth. Both players made amazing plays, and it went down to the wire. The very first game actually really went down to the wire. I do recall. I was so pleased with this matchup starting off, and I was really pleased that it actually paid off, right? So it did go down to the wire. Paul wins after sacrificing his Iron Hands in order to intimidate Joshua's Talonflame that was previously ripping through Paul's team. So Joshua started with a nice, and excuse me, Joshua, I'm just gonna call you Josh, and if you don't want me to call you that, let me know. Now with Joshua, or Josh's in my notes, it just says Joshua, Joshua, Joshua. And I'm like, I don't know if everyone likes to be called that. So with Josh's Talonflame was out for like maybe 5 turns and picked up like 2.5 knockouts. It was insane round 1. And like, people aren't thinking your Tailwinder is a huge threat. Like Pelipper, a little bit threatening. Murkrow, a little bit threatening. Talonflame, a little bit threatening typically. But Talonflame was able to just rip through Paul's team, because you look at Fluttermane, who can only take 1 hit really. You look at Amoonguss, who doesn't want to take a bunch of hits. You look at Iron Hands, who has probably the Assault Vest. Roaring Moon, who once he tears, he's only flying type. So, you know, like, Josh was just ripping through with, I believe he had Brave Bird and Flare Blitz. Now, in round 2, it seemed like Josh's team, you know, it had the Great Tusk, which fears 5 out of the 6 of Paul's team. The only thing Great Tusk is great against is the Arcanine. Fluttermane is very fast, Iron Bundle is very fast, and the rest of them, you know, we don't have to explain much. Fake out pressure from Iron Hands, along with obviously Drain Punch pressure from Iron Hands. Now, Iron Hands can also terrestrialize potentially into like a grass type or whatever the case is. So I was a bit nervous myself when I saw Josh pick the Great Tusks. Personally, even though I knew how much of a great player Paul was, I was actually hoping for Josh to win. Now, just double checking something here. Now, sorry, Paul. Now, in terms of the second round, so Great Tusk fears 5 out of 6 of Paul's team, which made Paul's decision a lot easier and Josh's decision a lot more difficult. Because Paul knows he doesn't really have to worry about Great Tusk, and Josh knows if he wants to bring this awesome Paradox Pokemon that has a lot of power that he might need, he knew that it can't come. It just shouldn't come, unfortunately. So Josh brings the same team, and he does Terra Ghost on Talonflame for the second time. This avoids the fake out from Paul, and Paul had the same lead with his Iron Hands as he did in round 1. Paul actually uses the Volt Switch though to switch up. So last time Paul stayed in with his Iron Hands and was getting eaten alive by Brave Birds and Flare Blitzes. But this time he actually uses a Volt Switch, and he made a Pokemon adjustment. I believe he brought Roaring Moon instead of Arcanine. And so pretty much Paul just goes crazy here. He gets 3 Pollen Puff heals in one single game. Like in round 2, I remember Paul had 3 heals with Pollen Puff. He did bring Arcanine, I think. I don't remember who he didn't bring, because I feel like he healed Arcanine. And again, that could be round 3. I'm looking at my notes from yesterday. Point is, Paul went absolutely bananas with the Pollen Puff heals. He really put on a clinic on how you can use Amoonguss in multiple ways. The reason why Paul had to use Pollen Puff so many times though is because Josh continued to threaten the Amoonguss with Taunt. Josh had Taunt on his Talonflame, which is a great tech, and it was just shutting down Amoonguss from doing anything other than Pollen Puff. The problem is it was kind of like fighting a Garganacl. It's like you hit the Pokemon and then it just heals up, but it also does some damage to you with Salt Cure. You know, like it was tough. Round 2 was really tough. After that, it said, I wrote down, you know, Paul wins handily due to Josh bringing the same team as game 2 and Paul making a helpful swap. So yeah, Paul ended up just winning both of the matches. It was Josh's first tournament. Okay, so I did, okay. So forget everything I said before about Josh having competed in a lot of things. Josh, I hope you continue to watch, because I did write down it was his first tournament. Maybe it was his first regionals. Maybe he's been in other, you know, minor tournaments, like, you know, just online. But shout out to Josh. Really glad to, you know, see on the game. And that's more of a look of Josh there. That's my boy. You know, he's got the mask on, so you can't see him smiling, But yeah, that is Joshua Lorsi, and shout out to him on his success here. All right, and so then the next battle that we had was James Beck versus Toller Webb. Let me go on ahead and bring that match on up. And obviously a lot of people know who James Beck is, right? That's the boy, that's the god, that's the king, the Don, you know. I don't remember if he won a championship. I remember they were talking about it, but I know, I mean, James is a competitor along with an excellent VGC streamer. Man, honestly, I love watching his videos. You can learn so much from them. So James Beck versus Toller Webb. Sorry, Toller, I didn't give you the same intro. Congratulations on starting off 5-0 here. Wish you luck, along with all competitors in the tournament. So round 1, Toller calls a protect by James and is rewarded with an excellent Will-O-Wisp plus Earthquake turn. And I wrote down that turn 2 is more of the same, honestly. So basically, James was left so far behind by turn 1 that he had to reach on turn 2 in order to have any opportunity of winning. Now, I didn't write down what moves he had to reach with, but maybe turn 2 he could have used protect, and just knowing that the Earthquake was coming, basically James had to say, hey, my opponent isn't an idiot, but I don't hope he is, but I need this turn to go right. And so James, you know how sometimes you're far behind in Pokemon and it's like, look, I just have to make this play because from here on out, I'm probably going to lose regardless. So I just got to go for the gusto. And that's what he did. Unfortunately, obviously, having lost turn 1 and 2, James ended up losing the round. Round 2, James made a switch in Pokemon. He brought Sandy Shocks again. I mean, he brought Sandy Shocks, but he again brought Talonflame, which has a nice start, and then he's hit with the rare special attack drop from Moonblast. I remembered this. This was painful. This was so painful. So Sandy Shocks and Talonflame, they actually had a nice little start to Toller's Flutter Mane and potentially Talonflame, I'm imagining. But unfortunately, Flutter Mane hit Sandy Shocks with the Moonblast, and Sandy Shocks ended up getting a special attack drop, which basically neutered it for the remainder of that match. Now, James does win a speed tie with Talonflame and taunts Toller's Talonflame, stopping the Will-O-Wisp against Brute Bonnet, who swept a bit through staples like Iron Tusk previously, I believe. Yeah, last game, James was actually sweeping a bit with Brute Bonnet, so it was important that whenever Toller saw the Brute Bonnet that he got a Will-O-Wisp on it. Looks like, unfortunately, that could not happen. Now, of course, we're skipping ahead a couple of turns. It's not a turn-by-turn thing. If you want the turn-by-turn, definitely just watch it. You know, it's an excellent stream. From there, James had Toller pinned. You know, James had Toller completely pinned down because he avoided the Will-O-Wisp, he forced the Talonflame into attacking, and he had his Brute Bonnet on the field, and his Brute Bonnet can deal out maximum damage. Both players chose the correct plays from here on out, but James was so far ahead with that one simple turn, which was the Will-O-Wisp, along with the speed tie, which I guess that's not a simple turn anymore. Along with threatening Toller with Dondozo, but not bringing it to defeat Toller. So Toller kind of round 2 built his team thinking James was going to bring Dondozo. And so basically James got ahead of a good bit with 2 things going right in one part of a turn. And Toller designed his team to fight Dondozo, which James did not bring. So, lastly, round 3, I put a lot of notes in, so I'm pretty much just going to be reading from here. So, round 3, it was the same leads from both teams. Toller catches James with a perfect protect. where James double targeted his Pokemon on turn. So Toller probably had his Flutter Mane and his Talonflame out. James doubled into the Flutter Mane, and that just, boy oh boy, if you have ever doubled into a Pokemon that protected, that is literally one of the worst feelings. But if you've ever been doubled into and you protected, that is, oh my goodness, that's better than food sometimes. So from there, James was stuck being forced into a reactionary status. So James, like, you know, he can go for the Gusto, but at this point, it's 1-1. Best of 3. Last time he tried to go for the Gusto, and his opponent is not an idiot. James recognizes that. So now James is kind of stuck being reactionary, where like Toller kind of knows what James is gonna do. James sort of knows what Toller is gonna do, but it's like, I have to react to what Toller just did and is doing to me. So he couldn't be as offensive. James, he couldn't be as offensive, which isn't always terrible. Towards the end, James had a slight chance with Iron Bundle and versus Brute Bonnet, but sadly, Toller actually managed to get a 10% chance to freeze James's Brute Bonnet, and so therefore James was not able to Spore Iron Bundle. The Spore would have given James an opportunity to maybe hit like 2 different Seed Bombs or 2 different Bullet Seeds and knock out Iron Bundle. Iron Bundle needed to 2-hit KO Brute Bonnet, but since Iron Bundle was faster, he ended up freezing him. So that was really tough. Really tough. So yeah, aside from that, I just felt like this game was very interesting because it's like a coin flip can decide a game. You know, a coin flip in terms of like just getting that speed tie can truly decide a game, but also RNG can decide a game too, you know, and was going to decide that game. James was either going to get his Spore or Toller. We didn't expect the freeze, the 10% freeze. We did not expect that. A 100% chance to Spore and survival on a hit. Yeah, we expect that because, you know, other than that, Toller would have had to maybe crit, and there's a 5% chance of that. So, you know, overall, this game just shows how important RNG is, as well as how important it is to get those like speed ties right. You know, if you don't have those speed ties right, it's very hard to win. So as you can see, the next battle we got is Emilio Forbes and Nathan Ortiz. So what I thought was really interesting is we have not seen a single Garganacl enter the field. Garganacl's usage rate was somewhere around 16% for this tournament, so not that high, but it hasn't been used at all. I'm not even sure if a team had Garganacl up to this point. I was just so excited to see my boy. That's, you know, my favorite competitive Pokemon right now. And that's probably going to change with these new Paradox Pokemon, because I already am really digging some of them, like Iron Hands and honestly Flutter Mane, Iron Bundle. I mean, there's so many good Paradox Pokemon. Anyway, Emilio Forbes versus Nathan Ortiz. So this was a shorter match. Emilio gains the lead against a Trick Room team turn 1 and just rode it out from there. Nathan calls a late game Trick Room and almost pulled off a comeback, but just didn't happen. Emilio was so far ahead that the late game Trick Room was, it felt lucky that Nathan was able to get the late game Trick Room up. But from there, it was like, what do? You know, it's like you can't knock out all of these Pokemon at once. So he was kind of left to perish there. Round 2, Emilio starts again with a good lead. Nathan sets up Trick Room on turn 3. So Nathan has really kind of, it seems like, taking his time with Trick Room. Being 6-0, I think that's so impressive. I'm like, oh my goodness. He has Dondozo, Tatsujiri, and he's got 2 Pokemon that can Trick Room, but he's not even worried about setting it up on the first turn. Like, that's so impressive. He's like, let me scout out your team, see what you can do to me, see what your plan is, and then I'll set up Trick Room whenever I'm ready. Emilio again finishes the game with his early lead. So basically, you know, both players were excellent. They both played really, really well. And Emilio Forbes is, I wrote down, he's actually known for going undefeated. So Emilio Forbes is known for doing stuff like this. He's known for shutting down other trainers in competition, and he's known for just busting behind. You know, he's not playing around when he gets here. He's not playing around. And not saying any competitor is, but goodness gracious. I wrote down that he is known for being undefeated. Shout out to Emilio. Goodness gracious. Shout out to Nathan, because I tell you what, nobody wants to go against someone who's known for being undefeated. I don't care what it is, unless it's undefeated in like a bad way somehow. Like, this guy is undefeated at having car accidents. It's like, okay, I can go up against you and I won't have a car accident, and you know, I'll feel pretty good about myself. But yeah, aside from that, shout out to Nathan, shout out to Emilio. Really great battle. Really, again, excellent turns. They just did their thing. It was just rough to beat this trainer. Now, the next battle we got is Luca Paz versus Giovanni Costa, which I love both of those names. They both just roll off the tongue nicely. Luca Paz and Giovanni Costa. Both are really classic teams. We got the Golden Go here. We got the Talonflame, the Dragon Knight, Tatsujiri Dondozo, mixed in with the Great Tusk. And literally pretty much the same thing on the other side, except for we swap it out for Meowscarada and Gothitelle. So really classic teams for both players, and I gotta say, they're both at 6-1, so maybe the classic teams just aren't doing it for the competitions. Maybe it is better to switch up your team because people are somewhat expecting and knowing what to do against those classic teams. Now, it's open team sheet, so you can see what your opponent is rocking anyways, but if you have practice against something, it just makes it that much more easier to do. So on round 1, turn 1, Luca went for an attack instead of tailwinding with his Talonflame. Gio doubled into him, into the Talonflame, and started the match 4-3. Gio's turn 2 Ghost Terra on Talonflame actually stopped Luca's E-Speed from the Dragon Knight Revenge, allowing him to win the first 2 turns. So basically, Luca just started off incredibly well. Luca doubled into the Talonflame. Giovanni went for the aggressive attack with his Talonflame. Next, Luca follows it up by terrestrializing his Talonflame, and Giovanni, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of scratching my head on that one. I was like, being that it's an open team sheet, why did you extreme speed into the Talonflame that has the Ghost Terra? I get it, maybe he was thinking like it's gonna force you to commit your Terra, or you're probably not gonna use it on this Pokemon, but definitely a tough outing for Giovanni there. Round 2, Giovanni gets a nice Will-O-Wisp, and next turn gets a knockoff. So he Will-O-Wisp the Dondozo, swapped out, I believe, and then did knockoff. Yep, it was after a swap to ruin Luca's Dondozo. So very important. Will-O-Wisp having Dondozo's attack along with the knockoff, ruining the leftovers from Dondozo. Giovanni makes literally 4 to 5 swaps prior to knocking out a single Pokemon on Luca's side. So for all those doubters saying you shouldn't swap in double battles, if you're making the right swap, which I know everyone knows, I hope, right? I hope everyone knows this, but if you're making the right swap, it's always okay to swap. Gio wins this match, although Luca played his butt off. During the second half of the match, it seemed Luca had made a statement against Gio's team, but it just didn't pan out. Gio continued to make the right plays. So, just a good match overall. Let's see who actually ended up winning this, though, because I'm like, hold on. Why do I feel like it was only 2 games, though?
Hitting into the talent.
Yeah, you see that? It says it was, oh, okay. Gio had won both matches.
As he goes for a tailwind this turn. So the Dragon Knight not.
Gio won both matches. Oh, wow. So, That's very interesting. So although Luca did the extreme speed antics, Gio was still able to win that. Unless I reversed the names. So honestly, round one of Giovanni versus Luca is worth checking out because I may have reversed the names in my notes explaining round one. Because I thought that based on my notes, I wrote down that Luca won the first 2 rounds, and I assumed that Luca won game 1 after that. But all right, moving on. So now we got Nick Navarre versus Yotam Cohen, which I actually didn't even know that this was a game. So I watched this morning and was like, oh snap. Now I gotta add this into the video. So Nick had a really interesting tech on his Iron Hands. He actually had Fire Punch and Sword Stance instead of Fake Out and Thunder Punch. So we'll see how it plays out, right? So round 1, Fluttermane, there's a Fluttermane mirror, but Yotam was able to bring his Tailwind pressure, whereas Nick brought Arcanine for Intimidate onto Talonflame, which was good. Especially because we saw how Joshua Lorcy's Talonflame was ripping through teams. So it's good to intimidate a Talonflame. Unfortunately, you're giving up a potential Tailwind, right? So Nick already knew that a Snarl was coming on turn 1 based on the lead of Fluttermane and Talonflame versus Fluttermane and Arcanine. He was like, okay, let me get my Tailwind off. Let me protect Fluttermane because I already know that you're going to want to Snarl. So Nick was forced to swap around after his Snarl didn't even hit the Fluttermane. It seemed like in this match, Nick made the best of his lead, but Yotam had just an upper hand just early in the match due to Nick not having a Tailwinder at all on his team. Nick does not have a single Tailwinder, so he kind of has to forfeit speed. Of course, Iron Bundle has Icy Wind, but what is that really doing? It's potential. There's a potential that Gothitelle has Trick Room, but I don't even think we got a chance to see that. Yeah, we didn't get a chance to see that in this game. So he was forfeiting speed the entire match or the entire round. Now, towards the end, it seemed both trainers were trading Icy Winds with Iron Bundle and just protecting their second Pokemon for a little bit. Yotam had 3 Paradox Pokemon, so he just honestly had pure power. Nick, of course, has his 3 Paradox Pokemon as well. But if we look at them and match them up, they have the same Paradox Pokemon, except for there's Iron Tusk versus Iron Hands. Iron Tusk clearly beats out Iron Hands, and Iron Hands is known for Fake Out. He's going to want to Fake Out turn 1. But Nick doesn't even have that, so Nick's Iron Hands, all he has is Drain Punch and Fire Punch. So it was really just tough. It was tough. Because if you look at Yotam's team, Drain Punch and Fire Punch just don't do anything into his team. It actually would be a little better to have a Thunder Punch here, even though Yotam could potentially swap into Great Tusk at any point and ignore the Thunder Punch. Now, again, I feel like they both made the best of their leads. And Yotam just squeaked out a win in that first round. He barely squeaked out a win in that first round. It really came down to the wire, especially with the Iron Bundle mirror. But Yotam was able to squeak out the win. In round 2, Yotam wins turn 1 again and tailwinds into a Moonblast instead of Protect. That one-hit KO Nick's Iron Bundle. So this time Nick brought Iron Bundle in the lead, and it got one-hit KO by the Tailwind Moonblast. Nick also brought Amoonguss, so you can't say he didn't try. You cannot say he didn't try. He brought 2 different Pokemon in round 2. He was like, look, round 1 came down to the wire, but I don't want it to come down to the wire. Nick was like, look, I need to demolish you, okay? I need to demolish you, and then we'll go into the next round of 3. So shout out to Nick for, you know, choosing a different team to start round 2. Nick was able to spore the Fluttermane, who just attacked. Nick then capitalizes by getting a Swords Dance off on his Iron Hands on the next turn, knowing that his opponent feared the fake out and had a sleeping Pokemon. So basically Flutter Mane ended up taking max sleep turns, and I guess his opponent didn't fear the fake out. But whatever the case was, Yotam didn't attack that turn. So Iron Hands got a free Swords Dance off. And Flutter Mane was sleeping. So Flutter Mane actually ends up taking maximum turns of sleep, which gave Nick a nice opportunity to even the score out. Unfortunately, Yotam still had a solid ground to stand on with 2 healthy Pokemon in the back, including his Great Tusks. What I noticed from this game though is both players are superb players. They're amazing. I mean, look at them. They're 7-1. Ah man, I wish Nick wasn't 7-1 because that means he's out of the tournament here. But they're both amazing players. It seemed like with this matchup, Yotam just had the better team. He had the better matchup, the better team, and it was really unfortunate because Nick just really couldn't do much into Yotam's team. Nick literally tried 2 completely different leads and, you know, just lost both matches. So really great tournament here. Really great start to the tournament, day 1. Let me know what you guys are excited for. What Pokemon are you excited to see? What Paradox Pokemon are you excited to see? And what trainers are you guys excited to see moving on into day 2? I'm going to try to get this uploaded ASAP Rocky, and hopefully you guys check it out even after the day 2 comes out. We are going to make a day 2 video as well. So if you didn't see it pop up, you're hearing it first from me. All right, aside from that, thank you guys for checking out the video. Definitely be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you again.